Welcome to Cultivate 21 and this session of the benefits of conducting a human resources audit. My name is Michael Maggiato, Senior Human Capital Advisor with Best Human Capital Advisory Group. At Best, I lead the Human Resources Business Advisory Services as well as provide retained executive search for the horticulture and other niche industries. I developed our firm's WR2 HR analysis, Best's Human Resources Audit, which is designed to identify the wins, risks, and remedies for client businesses. In this session, we will cover why it is important to conduct an audit of your human resources function enterprise-wide, where risk can be found throughout a company, how to conduct an HR audit, and when should HR audits be conducted. Why is measuring risk and understanding the areas of highest risk so important? A business must make money in order to survive, but the business landscape, regardless of the industry, is fraught with compliance landmines that can damage company reputation, decrease competitiveness, and cost millions due to fees, fines, and government-imposed remedies. Despite the recent pandemic and all of the business closures nationwide, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EEOC, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, and Department of Labor, or DOL, were aggressive in their protection of employees and enforcement of safety regulations. While lawsuits were down, the EEOC saw significant recoveries and merit factor resolutions, that is, charges that were resolved in the agency's administrative process in favor of the individual who filed the charge, were up double digits. And the Department of Labor saw record-setting enforcement amounts, including over $3.1 billion in direct payments to plans, participants, and beneficiaries by the Employee Benefit Security Administration, which has oversight responsibility of nearly 722,000 retirement plans, 2.5 million health plans, and a similar number of welfare benefit plans. The pandemic merely made business leaders even more aware of OSHA's General Duty Clause, requiring businesses to assure safe and healthful working conditions for working men and women. And yet violations of COVID-19 protocols risk the lives of millions of Americans and cost businesses $3.8 million in fees, fines, and government-imposed remedies in 2020 alone. Auditing your human resources function, identifying the risks, and implementing remedies to reduce or eliminate those risks is ultimately critical to the survival of your business. While businesses engage CPA firms annually to validate their financial performance and aid in the development of financial reports, too many businesses do nothing to ensure compliance within their human resources function. It does not matter if your company is small and has no dedicated human resources person, regardless of your company's size or industry. All businesses have responsibility to comply with employment law, and the costs of doing nothing are far larger than many realize. A simple function of running a business, like maintaining compliance with I-9 documentation, can carry significant costs for each violation when records are not completed properly, documentation is not validated, and files are not maintained appropriately. The EEOC has a sliding scale that increases compensatory and punitive damages based on the size of the organization. These compensatory damages are per occurrence and per employee. And while many businesses of all sizes want to care for their employees by offering various retirement plans, the Employee Retirement Income Security Act of 1974, otherwise known as ERISA, has significant requirements related to the timing of filing of information, reports, maintenance of records, disclosure to employees, and much more. Not every compliance item has a set menu of violation costs associated with it, and not every employment law is obvious for employers to know and understand. For example, even non-union environments must be aware of the requirements imposed on them by the National Labor Relations Act. Among the most critical components of this act is the protection to all employees, both union and non-union alike, to engage in protected concerted activity. According to the National Labor Relations Board, Terminations of employees for engaging in protected concerted activity exposes employers to liability for back pay, possible front pay, and the employee now has grounds to personally sue for damages. One modern example of protected concerted activity is an employee's right to speak about their employer through social media posts such as Facebook. Why is this protected? Employees have a right to complain about their work conditions, including pay, environmental factors, and treatment by management, whether they engage in this on social media, at a bar, a social gathering of friends and family, or as part of a unionizing event. Such actions are protected in order to allow an employee the chance to effect positive change in the workplace. While some of the costs in the previous slide may seem small on a per occurrence basis, here are some far more significant costs. Safety is a very big concern in the horticulture industry. More and more automation is being introduced to aid in overcoming the challenges of staffing low and no skill labor and to meet the increasing demand by customers. Here you can see just a couple of costs for OSHA violations per occurrence. But one of the most significant to be aware of is violations of the Fair Labor Standards Act, or FLSA. In essence, the intent of this act ensures a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. Misclassification of employees is among the most common violations of the FLSA. Overtime can be such a huge drain on company coffers. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you would never have to pay overtime again by just making every employee salary exempt? Well, not so fast. There are weekly minimums that must be met. The employee's weekly salary must be honored even if the employee works only a single day in the work week, regardless of the number of hours they put in. And then the actual duties that an employee is responsible for must align with one of the defined exemption categories. Absent all three of these conditions, employees cannot be salary exempt and must remain hourly and be paid overtime for each hour over 40 hours in a work week. FLSA also governs meal breaks, another common violation. While not every state breaks it down by category, defining 15-minute breaks or exact lengths of meals, some states do. So you need to be aware of both your state and federal requirements. Violations could lead to jail time and up to $10,000 per violation. Sometimes this fine is paid for by the company, but other times it could be the responsibility of the direct supervisor. And that jail time? If you're a supervisor, entry or mid-level manager, and you were responsible for managing the situation that led to the FLSA violation, don't count on the CEO or company president to sit in jail for you. Companies that lead through effective HR functions, investing appropriately in their people and processes, are better able to plan effectively, mitigate or eliminate negative impacts, and increase their competitiveness in the market. It is often said that people are a business's most critical asset. A well-known tenet of management is what gets measured gets done. Measuring and understanding the risks posed by the HR function, therefore, is critical to the growth and success of the business. An effective HR audit will examine both the core functional areas of human resources and ensure that the department has the right design, people, and environment in which to conduct the HR operations. Let's define the various areas of an effective HR audit. Human Resources Strategic Management, aligning the HR function with strategic and tactical planning. This is not something that is exclusive to large companies. Your business plan is your strategic plan for many small and medium-sized businesses. Regardless of size, human resources should contribute to the strategic planning process in order to align HR operations and programs with that plan. Workforce planning and selection, the process, tools, and methods used to source and select organizational talent. Look at what they are and how effective and efficient they are. Training and organizational development, snapshots of the programs, processes, and the impact they have on the organization. Total rewards, the processes and tools used to develop the comp and benefit structure, as well as ensuring it meets organizational needs. Employee and labor relations, everything from compliance and engagement to fending off or dealing with unions. Safety and security, this includes facility, equipment, and OSHA compliance, as well as disaster recovery and drills. Human Resources Information Systems and Metrics, employee records compliance and human capital metrics that help inform good business decisions. Diversity and equal employment opportunity, compliance and employee diversity that leads to innovation and creativity. This includes diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, a key area that addresses many of today's social justice issues. And then there are 3 functional HR categories assessed as well, including HR facilities and equipment. Does HR have the facilities and equipment to perform their function efficiently and effectively? HR organization. Is the HR function structured to maximize the effectiveness and the efficiency? And the HR staff. Is the HR function appropriately staffed with trained and qualified personnel to operate effectively and efficiently? An effective HR audit flows through several steps, from information gathering to the final step of action planning and remedy implementation. Let's walk through the steps. Starting with information gathering, the audit will include on-site visits, interviews with people across all levels of the organization, from executive leadership through frontline entry-level employees, and an extensive review of a wide variety of materials, files, systems, and more. Why will we be looking at these? Let me elaborate on just a few less obvious items on this list. Systems should be evaluated to ensure they meet the needs of the department, appropriately communicate with other companies' systems, and produce adequate reports to inform good business decisions. But systems also store data and need to comply with data retention and file organization and maintenance requirements. For example, do they have the appropriate controls in place to ensure information security? Communications are examined and evaluated for effectiveness and efficiency, alignment with best and next practices, and compliance with legal requirements. For example, are you sending rejection notices to candidates? What do such rejection notices say? Are email communications between hiring managers and recruitment identifying one candidate should be hired over another? And if so, do the reasons communicated in writing conform with work-related reasoning, or do they discriminate against someone for age or other protected status? Recovery plans include business continuity and disaster recovery plans. Think of active shooter, fire evacuation, and tornado or hurricane plans and drills. How do you communicate with and ensure all employees are safe? How can businesses continue in the face of disaster, whether that disaster be made by man or nature? Surveys are important to review to ensure that they are being conducted and collected. Surveys reviewed include both external surveys, such as the collection of benchmark compensation and benefits data, and internal surveys, such as employee opinion surveys around total rewards and employee engagement, but also looking at the effectiveness of such surveys. The evaluation and analysis for our W2 HR analysis will be conducted at BEST's corporate offices, where we will assign a category risk score based on the analysis of the risks uncovered. A deep analysis of the information gathered will be conducted, leading to a comprehensive, in-depth report outlining the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats from the HR function. We have developed easy visuals to cue business leaders in on the severity of the risks, including colors, numbers, and a sliding thermometer. This will help leadership prioritize when tackling the remedies to reduce or eliminate risks. Upon completion of the report, The results will be presented to executive leadership, including HR leadership, and action planning will be conducted to determine priorities, specific steps, and milestones for completion. A critical note when it comes to risks and remedy implementations. Business leaders have three options when treating risks. Eliminate the risk. This will remove any negative outcome, including fees, fines, and government-imposed remedies. Sometimes, however, the actions and costs associated with risk removal may be quite arduous. Risks do not have to be eliminated. Mitigate the risk. Businesses could choose to take steps intended to reduce or eliminate some of the least desirable outcomes from a risk without completely eliminating the entire risk entirely. Though there may be some fees, fines, and government-imposed remedies, these costs may be acceptable by executive management. They may seem to be merely the cost of doing business the way they want to do business. Or you could accept the risk. In other words, do nothing. Like with mitigating the risk, leadership may feel that the costs are acceptable, or that the cost of eliminating or even mitigating the risk outweighs the cost of accepting the risk. Let's take the Affordable Care Act as an example. Businesses with more than 50 full-time equivalent employees are required to provide health insurance to their workers. There are minimum requirements that the plans must be offered. The larger the company, the easier it is to offer such plans without cutting into profitability too significantly. The smaller the business, the more challenging it is to offer the insurance. Failing to offer insurance will lead to fines. Even for companies offering insurance, failing to obtain a sliding scale enrollment by employee population, or if any employees, instead of enrolling in your company plans, enroll in the marketplace plans, you could still face fines. Some businesses made the calculation and decided it was more cost-effective to accept the penalty than it was to offer the insurance. And that is absolutely okay to do. The decision was either to offer insurance and incur the associated costs, or not to offer insurance and incur the associated penalty fines. In that example, certainly the costs don't just boil down to the impact on the profit and loss statement, though that is exactly how some business leaders looked at the decision. Other factors to think about as a business leader include how you will compete in the labor market when competitors offer health care and your business does not. How will you drive employee engagement, which leads to performance and retention, without offering health care when your business is required to by law or face fines? You see, not every element of human resources is purely dollar-driven. Business leaders need to keep fiscal impacts in mind to inform good business decisions, but they should not base all business decisions on the bottom line alone. A well-executed HR audit will identify wins, those things the business does well and should keep focused on lest they become risks. Identify the risks themselves, those things that need improvement and can be very costly to a business if not corrected. And identify the remedies, those actions they should take to mitigate or eliminate risks. A well-designed and executed HR audit will lead to many positive impacts for businesses, including, but not limited to, compliance, cost savings, better employee retention, and increased employee engagement. This is why we call our HR audit the WR2 HR analysis. It examines the wins, risks, and remedies. An HR audit should be scalable, able to meet the needs of any business of any size in any industry. As example of this, we have 2 case studies available on our website that truly reflect the breadth of our audit's capabilities. One is from a 4-employee nonprofit organization, and the second one is from a 2,200-employee multi-site healthcare business that has many similarities to a grower operation. Similarities in the challenges they faced, succession planning, and even the systems and people. Let's briefly walk through each of the 8 functional areas of the HR audit. We will start with Human Resources Strategic Management. In your operation, there may be some good elements like what was found here. You may also find your operation has similar risks to what was found in this business. Let me share some insights from the audit around the risks that were uncovered. Absence of a strategic or tactical plan can be a significant risk for a business. Such plans are the yardstick against which all other business decisions are measured and inspire high levels of performance, ensure a common direction for the organization, and can be used to address poor performance as well as ensure that business decisions are aligned. As with any department within your business, human resources should have a well-developed budget that captures all relevant costs. Without a budget or a well-developed budget, HR lacks the capacity to maintain the same fiscal responsibility that all other business functions and departments are required to follow. Their decisions are likely to be out of alignment with the organizational priorities and objectives. Succession planning is critical to the long-term success of any business. A vision of the future, understanding of where you are today, and a plan to move the organization forward in the future inevitably means that new roles that do not exist today will likely be created. People in existing roles may find some of those roles go away in the future. How will your organization develop the people in roles expected to be eliminated and advance them into the new roles to be created? What about planning for retirement, development of future leaders? Succession planning is critical to every business. Throughout these examples, a common theme will be seen in some of the easier risks. Remedies often will be the reverse of the risk. For example, the risk of a missing HR budget has the remedy of engaging in the development of an HR budget that captures all associated costs. The absence of a global succession plan is remedied by the development of a global succession plan. Clearly, the action planning phases will dig more deeply into the specific action steps and milestones that will bring about the existence of these and other remedies. The goal here is just to succinctly identify what needs to be done to mitigate or eliminate the risk. Examining workforce planning and selection, there are several wins you may find in your business too. This particular company had some unusual risks. The Vice President of Human Resources had been promoted into the role from the Director of Talent Acquisition position, but never backfilled that role. The Vice President of Human Resources retained responsibility for the recruitment function. In an organization of their size, 2,200 employees, with high turnover roles similar to laborers in horticulture, it is critical to separate the HR functions from senior HR leadership. Senior HR leadership, in this case the Vice President of Human Resources, which is the highest level of HR in the organization and who reports directly to the CEO, should set human resources strategy in alignment with organizational strategy, then work through their direct reports to ensure implementation at the tactical and operational level. When you take your senior human resource leader and give them direct responsibility for the day-to-day actions of a tactical or operational function, they cannot appropriately execute and drive strategy at the same time. Many companies fall into the same trap that this organization did by having a culture of silos that prevents maximizing the use of existing talent. As it relates to the workforce planning and selection section, talent acquisition was responsible for creating all recruitment marketing materials and messaging. They did not have direct access or command and control of social media and had to ask marketing to post messages. But there was no partnership nor relationship there between the two functions. Breaking down the silos would allow for synergistic partnerships between internal marketing and the talent acquisition function, allowing for collaborative development of recruitment messaging that better aligned with organizational brand image management. Sharing of command and control for specific talent acquisition related social media sites would allow for better timing and targeted marketing for talent attraction. And as you can see, the remedies address reversal of these issues as well. One thing to point out, The shortened summary of wins, risks, and remedies we are going over are a listing of the top 3 or so from each, pulled from a larger list of approximately 10 or so at the end of each section. They are included in the executive summary so that executives can quickly get a feel for the overall results and magnitude of the information uncovered. At the end of each section within the full report, a more comprehensive list of the wins, the risks, and the remedies is shared, as you can see here. A bit more detail is also provided. Will form a better guide when developing the action plans. Let's continue looking at more common uncovered risks. While many of us would love to believe our training and organizational development are tops in the industry, and certainly many businesses do a good job, there are still a significant number of businesses lagging behind as a result of the Great Recession. When the Great Recession hit, human resources was eviscerated as leadership felt there was no need to spend money on recruitment or training when we are laying off people left and right. As the economy returned, recruitment bounced back far more quickly than learning and development did. The recovery took so long that many business leaders were lulled into a false sense of security, believing that they could simply hire the talent from outside the company and bring in the knowledge and skills they needed, rather than spend money on training themselves. They often turned to colleges and universities, believing it was their role and responsibility to train people for the exact technology and systems used in their company. But that is not the role of colleges and universities. These institutions are not funnels for one specific company or another, but rather a training ground for all businesses in all industries, and so are agnostic relative to the systems and processes they teach, since they have no idea what company will hire which student. While learning and development did begin to recover and evolve in the changing landscape, this recent pandemic-driven recession is having a similar impact. Hopefully, business leaders have learned a lesson from the Great Recession and will be less likely to repeat the mistakes they made in the past, but it is still too early to tell as we are still in the early stages of this recovery. For this particular audit, while the company did have some training wins on the clinical side, they sorely lacked on the operational side. While they did have the development of some leadership training, they failed to gain buy-in from executive management on the more robust program that was needed. And a large part of why this happened? Lack of return on investment data. This is indicative of a lack of strong business acumen, something further uncovered later on in the HR staff section, but it is important to call it out here. Human resources should have a strong business acumen, the ability to read financial reports, conduct ratio analysis, and engage in financial modeling to build a business case in support of HR initiatives they champion is critical. So business leaders are better informed on the impact of their decisions to support or reject the proposals. This is also one example of this company and their challenge we uncovered earlier of their silo. Even in the absence of strong business acumen, partnering with accounting and finance and collaborating on a return on investment model would have made a significant difference to this company's leadership. Total rewards is the combination of both benefits and compensation. Does your business look at both as a singular entity governed by a unifying philosophy, or as independent functions operating, sometimes, in competition with one another? Best practice is to treat them collectively as total rewards, guided by an overarching philosophy aligned with the organization's strategic plan. While this company did take a total rewards approach, they did not invest appropriately in the tools necessary to benchmark compensation and benefits. As a result, they lagged the market to a degree that was harmful to the business. While it is possible to lag in some areas of compensation, you should be able to offset that lag by matching or leading the market somewhere else. to have a compelling story that shows employees and candidates the benefit of what they gain instead. To do this effectively requires acquisition of both compensation and benefit benchmarking surveys. While there was some collection of such surveys, the data was free, old, and not granular enough. While free seems to be a good business deal, remember, anything of value comes at a price. If it's free, it is free for a reason, and is likely not robust enough to build a compensation or benefit design strategy around. And that was clearly the case here. I have to pause and make a quick shameless plug for more information about compensation design and the importance of these compensation survey data collections. Please see our other presentation at Cultivate 21, Compensation Basics for the HR Generalist. Employee relations may be very familiar to many business leaders here today. What may not be as familiar is the labor relations component. While your specific business in horticulture is likely a union-free environment, as mentioned earlier in this presentation, the National Labor Relations Act imposes some very important legal requirements on businesses, including non-union businesses. While I addressed earlier the concept of protected concerted activity, another element that impacts non-union environments is what they can and cannot do when a unionizing event begins in their business. Unions have a right to organize in any business, and there are actions and steps that businesses can do and take to encourage their employees to reject the attempt to unionize. HR leadership does not have to be a complete expert on the National Labor Relations Act, but they should be familiar with the do's and don'ts for preventing unionization. They should be able to recognize a unionization attempt and be able to inform management promptly so legal and proactive steps can be taken to keep your organization union-free. Another area that was identified here, and it was also identified in most of the other areas in more detailed breakouts of wins, risks, and remedies, was the lack of review of new and revisions to legislation. The legal landscape changes quite rapidly sometimes. While it is rare that new landmark laws are passed, such as the Affordable Care Act, the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the Fair Labor Standards Act, what is far more common is the changes in nuances based on court interpretations that may create or even ease burdens on businesses. Sometimes there are short-term laws passed and renewed, as we saw with the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, or FFCRA, which created the burden of compliance with a narrow section of the Family Medical Leave Act, or FMLA, for businesses under 50 employees, and created paid leave for all businesses under 500 employees. While it was originally set to expire at the end of December 2020, it was renewed 2 different times and adjusted in various ways to provide a benefit to employees while reducing the burden on businesses. Now it is set to expire at the end of September of 2021. It is important to have a strategic human resources professional on staff who can help your business keep abreast of the ever-changing legal landscape and maintain compliance with employment law across all of the disciplines of human resources. Thanks to this pandemic, safety and security is an area of heightened awareness for all business leaders. It has necessitated the acquisition and appropriate use of PPE, social distancing, and significant adjustments to workflows and work sites, including remote work. As mentioned earlier, the introduction of AI and automation in horticulture will necessitate understanding and compliance with a wider variety of elements from OSHA. Compliance with hazardous spill programs and lockout-tagout procedures may be very new for companies just introducing machinery. All businesses should be familiar with OSHA's 300 and 301 forms. Unfortunately, and due again to the lack of appropriate training and siloed nature of the corporate culture, most HR professionals in this audited company were unaware of these forms, how to report incidences, and even unaware of the state report of first injury and death forms used for workers' compensation reporting. From a security standpoint, Given the very, very unfortunate prevalence of mass shootings in the United States today, while it is not required, it is best practice to have an active shooter drill and plan in place. Like tornado drills and fire drills, practice of active shooter drills are critical to ensure prompt compliance and keep all employees safe. These are often components of a business continuity and/or disaster recovery plan, something that this business did not have in place at the time of the audit. A common occurrence I have seen is that a company may even have some of these plans in place, but the audit is of the HR function, and if HR is unaware of the plan, its location, and cannot obtain it from its current source or location at the time of data collection, it is assumed to not exist and can impact the risk score for the business. And even though the risk can be immediately corrected with the discovery of the existing plan, it tells something to executive management when human resources leadership is unaware of the existence of such plans. Human resources information systems can take many forms, even analog. When I conducted the HR audit of the small person nonprofit firm, they used a filing cabinet to store hard copy files with no digital systems in place. They did use some spreadsheets stored on their SharePoint site to track, measure, and calculate certain data, but it was minimal at best. Of course, it was only a 4-person firm, so there was very little compliance burden on record keeping, data collection, or reporting necessary. Their system met their current needs in the organization. Other companies may benefit from more robust digital systems. The only important element is if the system meets the organization's needs for record retention, compliance, and reporting. In the larger company from which these audit results were taken, there was no record retention policy. In fact, they had retained records well past the EEOC recommended retention date. Destruction of data beyond the record retention date is very important for many reasons. One reason is that it protects the organization from the mistakes of its past. Should your business have failed to comply with certain measures and later correct the non-compliance, but still retain the documents well beyond their record retention dates, during a government audit, if those prior records should be found, your business would be in violation. Arguing that it is unfair to hold your business accountable for a situation found on a record that is beyond its record retention date is not a valid argument and will not succeed in court. The court will simply argue that you should have destroyed it after its retention date. In the final section we will look at is diversity and equal employment opportunity. Today, social justice issues around diversity, equity, and inclusion have created urgency to comply with a quickly changing landscape. While laws at the federal level are fairly stable, court interpretations of those laws is constantly evolving, and new laws at the state level are being created at a breakneck pace. Some basic elements were missing here, including absence of a policy and standard operating procedure for employees to request a reasonable accommodation. This was a critical miss. The Americans with Disabilities Act requires businesses to consider candidates and employees for employment decisions, whether it be hiring, firing, promotion, demotion, or career development opportunities, without consideration of their disability, but only job-related criteria. It creates a burden on businesses to engage in an interactive process to develop reasonable accommodations that would allow the disabled to perform the essential duties and responsibilities of the role. As such, businesses need to have a policy in place and a standard operating procedure for reviewing and considering requests for a reasonable accommodation, and such policies and standard operating procedures must comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act and Amendments Acts. Additionally, the company lacked a policy and clearly defined standard operating procedure for conducting workplace investigations. When an issue is brought to leadership's attention, formally or informally, it creates a legal burden on businesses to investigate promptly, and as a result, it is in a business's best interest to have a defined process and standard operating procedure for conducting workplace investigations. Risks to a company are not exclusively based on compliance or lack of compliance with existing laws, rules, and regulations. Though such risks are the most obvious, many risks arise from adherence or not with best and next practices. Best practices can ensure compliance, but they also may address effectiveness and efficiency within the HR function. Next practices are ahead of the curve, leading actions and behaviors that, when eventually adopted by the masses, will become new best practices, but at the moment, firms implementing such are just ahead of their time. The WR2HR analysis can make recommendations based on best and next practices in the HR profession that cross all company industries. We often challenge the idea, "This is the way we have always done it," to evolve into the idea, "Here is a better way." Regulatory burden can be solved and resolved with different changes aligned with your business's life cycle. For example, there is a time when it makes strategic sense to outsource transactional and operational human resources to an administrative service organization or even a preferred employer organization. There's also a time when it makes strategic sense to bring HR operations back in-house. Additionally, given the constant state of change in the legal landscape, you can bet the burden for reporting and record keeping will only grow over time. Just look at a minuscule sample of paperwork necessary today. When opportunities are identified through the audit, we often provide forms and other documents to aid in the remedy implementation as exhibits at the end of the report. Given all of the challenges businesses have faced in this recent pandemic, now is the time to conduct your HR audit. Get ahead of the curve. We have seen that this pandemic did not stop the government from pursuing cases, that millions and billions of dollars have been recovered from violations. There has never been a better time to figure out what you don't know and help you meet your legal obligations and compliance requirements, increase employee engagement and retention, lower costs and reduce threats that can cost your company millions of dollars. Thank you for watching this presentation on the benefits of conducting a human resources audit. Please contact me, Michael Maggiato at Best Human Capital and Advisory Group, with questions or to schedule your HR audit. You can also find more information on our website at bestHRaudit.com. Please enjoy the rest of the show here at Cultivate 21.